Coming up today, Samsung C&T shareholders are voting on whether it should be acquired by sister company Cheil Industries. The merger is seen as crucial for the smooth generational transfer of power from Kun-hee to his only son. The two Koreas failed to reach a compromise on their protracted dispute over the wages of North Korean workers at their joint industrial park in the north. Plus, over 300,000 people are urged to leave their homes as Typhoon Nanka makes landfall in southern Japan. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 17th of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, a meeting is currently underway that will decide the fate of a proposed merger of two key Samsung Group affiliates and possibly affect the future of the group itself. Shareholders in Samsung C&T have been casting their ballots on a proposed $8 billion takeover by Samsung's de facto holding company, Cheil Industries. With the attendance rate at over 83%, the proposed merger requires approval from two-thirds of shareholders. Now, Korea's National Pension Service, C&T's biggest shareholder, with an over 11% stake, has reportedly supported the merger, as was widely expected. If the merger gets the go-ahead, it will put Lee Jay-yong, the only son of Samsung Group chairman Kun-hee, in a much stronger position at the conglomerate as he looks to transfer control to himself. Shareholders of Cheil Industries unanimously voted yes to the proposed merger at their own meeting this morning. Now, US hedge fund Elliott Associates, the third largest stakeholder in Samsung C&T, has been trying to block the merger, arguing the deal undervalues the construction unit. The final outcome is expected this afternoon. Korea's National Police Agency is investigating the leak of the country's largest automaker's designs to a Chinese manufacturer. The financial damage to Hyundai Motor is expected to run into the tens of millions of dollars. Shin Se-min reports.
Hyundai Motor Group is involved in what qualifies as a case of industrial espionage, with one of its automobile designs leaked to a Chinese company. A former employee of one of the group's subcontracting firms is being investigated on allegations that he had stolen and used auto designs and confidential business information from Hyundai Motor Group after leaving the firm. Some of the 200 classified business documents included strategies and designs for unreleased vehicles.
The design blueprint has been used to sketch the exterior, body, and the motion of the vehicle, allowing them to easily come up with their final product.
Another design service company has also been guilty of similar practices. The representative of a Korean outsourcing company has posted Hyundai Motor Group's business information on the company's computer network, illegally sharing confidential information with those doing business with Chinese firms. Normally, the subcontractors must delete all related information upon completion of the order. Prosecutors have so far arrested 22 who had been involved in unlawful sharing and theft of information. Prosecutors say that while the investigation is ongoing, they estimated the financial damage from the leakage to be over 70 billion won, or $61 million, since the information was first exposed last year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's producer price index has held steady, with figures from last month showing no significant change from May. The Bank of Korea says June's index stood at 101.8. but that's actually a 3.6% drop on year. Prices have been on the slide since 2013 on the back of falling oil prices before inching up slightly in May. The price of coal and petroleum products in June edged up 0.9% on month, while the price of agricultural goods fell. The producer price index is typically reflected in consumer prices 1 or 2 months later. Korea's National Assembly is marking the 67th Constitution Day today, with the Prime Minister, Assembly Speaker, Supreme Court and Constitutional Court Chief Justices all attending a special event. Making a congratulatory speech, Assembly Speaker Jung Il-hwa stressed the need for a constitutional amendment for the sake of national unity and to better protect the rights of the people.
Although the actual constitutional amendment takes place during the 20th National Assembly term, we must start discussions now.
Jung also proposed talks with North Korea's Assembly Speaker, emphasizing the importance of the legislative body's role in contributing to peace on the Korean peninsula. Now, Korea declared its constitution in 1948 and designated July 17th as Constitution Day, a week ahead of the inauguration of the country's first president, Lee Sung-man. Now, government officials from South and North Korea have failed to hammer out a compromise in their drawn-out dispute over the minimum wage for North Korean workers at their joint industrial park. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The two Koreas held rare government-level talks on Thursday aimed at resolving a long-standing wage hike dispute at the inner-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, but were unable to narrow their differences. Soon after the talks, North Korea's Vice Director of Special Economic Zone Development, Park Chol-soo, emphasized there is no need for this kind of negotiation in the future, labeling it a waste of time. The two sides were locked in 4 rounds of talks but failed to come to any sort of compromise.
The South presented plans designed to normalize operations at the complex, while the North focused only on the wage hike issue, so we weren't able to come to a consensus.
These were the first government-level talks between the two Koreas since June last year. In February, Pyongyang unilaterally raised the minimum monthly wage for North Korean workers by around 5% to $74. Seoul rejected the move, calling it a breach of a 2004 agreement stipulating that the two sides set wages together. In late May, the North accepted the South's tentative offer to pay wages at the current amount of slightly over $70, buying time to resolve the issue. The two sides also failed to set a date for the next meeting. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
South Korea has invited North Korea to an international security dialogue set to take place in Seoul this September. The South's Defense Ministry said on Friday that it sent a telegram this morning inviting Park Yong-sik, the North's Department Director of the Ministry of People's Security. Now, this is the first time Seoul has invited an official from Pyongyang to the annual Seoul Defence Dialogue since it began in 2012. This year, some 250 defence officials from around the world, including the US, China and Russia, are expected to take part. A senior US diplomat has urged North Korea to learn from the landmark nuclear deal Iran has signed with 6 world powers earlier in the week. At a regular press briefing, Under-Secretary of State Wendy Sherman said the historic agreement demonstrates that a country can come out of isolation as well as sanctions and become part of the global community in a peaceful way, adding that the Iranian deal shows the effectiveness of multilateral diplomacy. She said it could give the North Korean regime second thoughts about the, quote, very dangerous path that it is currently pursuing, end quote. Her comments come after Iran and 6 world powers, including the US, reached a landmark agreement earlier in the week calling on Tehran to significantly limit its nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. A Japanese firm is being accused of double standards for its plans to apologize to US prisoners of war forced into labor for it during World War II, but not the tens of thousands of Korean victims. An official from Mitsubishi Materials told Seoul-based Yonhap news agency on Thursday that it will refrain from commenting on whether or not the company plans to apologize to the Korean victims of forced labor during the war. Also, regarding the reason for the company's disregard for Korean victims while apologizing to American POWs, Mitsubishi Materials said it will address the matter after a formal apology is issued to the American on Sunday. A Korean court recently ordered an affiliate of Mitsubishi Materials, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, to compensate 4 Korean women who were forcibly conscripted to labor during the Second World War. A group of Japanese journalists has paid a visit to a shelter for elderly Korean women who were forced into sexual slavery for Japanese troops during World War II. The visit, the first of its type, was aimed at seeking a historical reconciliation between the two countries. Son Jung-in has more.
A documentary on the Korean victims of Japan's wartime system of sexual slavery is being shown, and the visitors' eyes are fixed on the screen. They are Japanese journalists from 16 Japan-based media firms who paid a visit to the House of Sharing in Gwangju, Gyeonggi-do Province, which provides shelter for former Korean sex slaves. The reporters said they wanted to meet the women in person and listen to their testimonies in an objective manner to find a way toward historical reconciliation between Korea and Japan. The elderly victims sitting face-to-face with the journalists could not contain the resentment they have felt for so many years.
All we ask for is a sincere apology from Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and for him to restore our honor. We don't understand why this is so hard for him when we have dedicated our lives for justice.
The journalists asked the victims for their opinion on the Asian Women's Fund, which was raised from Japan's private sector in 1995 to compensate the survivors. The victims maintained that the Japanese government must itself provide compensation.
We hope the journalists clearly convey the victims' sad history so the two sides can work together to resolve this issue.
The victims asked the journalists to act as mediators to urge the Japanese government to acknowledge state responsibility for its historical wrongdoings. The timing of the visit is significant as it comes ahead of the 70th anniversary of Korea's independence from Japanese colonial rule and the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Only 48 victims remain alive in Korea. 손정인, Arirang News.
The chairwoman of the U.S. Federal Reserve says the U.S. labor market has moved closer to a normal state, which is why the central bank is likely to start raising short-term interest rates in the coming months. Speaking to the U.S. Senate Banking Committee on Thursday, Janet Yellen said she would prefer the rate hike to be prudent and gradual. She said moving too soon could threaten the recovery, while taking too long holds its own risks, like accelerating inflation. Yellen again avoided specifying when the Fed is likely to lift rates from near zero. Most policymakers at the Fed said they expect the hike to come this year if the economy strengthens as expected. Private economists see September as the likely time for the hike. Eurozone finance ministers have agreed to provide a €7 billion bridging loan to help Greece meet its upcoming debt repayments to the European Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The European Central Bank also says it will increase emergency support to Greek banks. It plans to allow them access to an extra €900 million in emergency funding. The ECB's decision means Greek banks will likely reopen on Monday for the first time since late June. The latest developments come after Greek Parliament this week approved austerity measures demanded by its international creditors in order to receive a third bailout of some €86 billion. Officials are in the final stages of signing off on that, which is why Greece needs this bridging loan. The curtain has gone up on one of Korea's most glamorous events of the year, the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival. The 19th edition sees its usual mix of fantasy and horror movies, and a number of big-name stars are there to promote their latest flicks. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Love, mystery, and adventure perfectly sums up the films at this year's Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival. During the 11-day event, 235 films from 45 countries will be featured, ready to captivate the audience. The festival, also known as Beefin, is all about genre films with a focus on fantasy and horror.
Horror, sci-fi, fantasy, action, you name it. They're all here to chase away the summer heat.
The opening film is Moonwalkers by famous French director Antoine Bardu-Jacquet. The film incorporates a novel view when portraying the hopes and dreams of young protagonists who go back in time. Other films to look out for include John McClane's Western movie Slow West and Sion Sono's The Chasing World, a story about a group of schoolgirls that go into a mysterious forest. The closing piece is The Chosen Forbidden Cave by Korean director Kun-hee, who produced The Neighbors that performed very well at the Korean box office in summer of 2012. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now it's typhoon season in this part of the world, so for that reason we're going to take a brief look at the weather. And due to the indirect effect of Typhoon Nanka, making landfall in Japan. Most of Korea will be cloudy today, with eastern regions receiving some rainfall and also some rather strong winds. Coastal areas are also expected to be hit by high winds and waves through Saturday. High wind warnings have been issued for some port cities and islands, and 3 flights and all ferries to Japan have been cancelled today, so bear that in mind if you're planning on travelling. Now, the typhoon made landfall in southern Japan late Thursday and has left 2 people dead and at least 31 people injured. Around 350,000 people were urged to evacuate as the storm approached Japan. Nanka has since been downgraded to a tropical storm, but Japanese officials say large areas will continue to be slammed by strong winds and heavy rain. And with that, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, those are stories we have for you this Friday lunchtime in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.com. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.